June 10th, 1944. A quiet French village, Oradour-sur-Glane. By nightfall, 642 men, women, and children were dead, burned alive in a church, shot in barns, left in the streets. The killers wore black uniforms marked with twin lightning bolts. Who were these men? How did a farmer's son from Bavaria or a teenager from Berlin become part of Hitler's most feared army? This is the story of the Waffen-SS, the soldiers who turned war into terror. At their peak, the Waffen-SS marched nearly 1 million strong. Their black uniforms, silver skulls, and twin lightning runes became symbols of fear across Europe. They fought on every front of the war, from the frozen steppes of Russia to the beaches of Normandy, their reputation stained with both ferocity and atrocity. But this was not how they began. Their origins were far smaller and far stranger than the empire of fear they became. In 1925, Jew or Bolshevik were stabbed again and again, violence ritualized until killing became reflex. The oath sealed it. Carl Fischer, who joined in 1937, recalled, "The oath was everything. We swore on our blood, our honor, to serve without question, to kill without hesitation." Otto Schneider of the Leibstandarte remembered the belief that followed. "We were taught to crush the weak. We believed we were God's chosen to remake the world." By 1939, the Waffen-SS had swollen to 20,000 men. The Leibstandarte stood as Hitler's hand-picked guard. The Totenkopf, named for the skull on their collars, drew from concentration camp staff. Himmler himself declared their purpose in 1938. "We are the future. We will carve a new world from the ashes of the old with fire and blood." But this was never just about soldiers. Himmler was Bavaria, 1933. The barbed wire was still fresh when the first SS recruits marched through its gates. Long before Dachau became infamous as a concentration camp, it served another purpose: Himmler's first brutal forge. Here, in cold barracks and on muddy parade grounds, a small guard unit was being transformed into something darker. Not soldiers, zealots. And what began here would spread like fire across Europe. They came young, teenagers, farm boys, shop clerks. Some barely 20. They arrived searching for belonging, a cause, a place in Hitler's new Germany. What they found was no ordinary boot camp. It was a crucible designed to strip away identity and replace it with fanatic would be painted in the West. May 10th, 1940. At dawn, the German army stormed into Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Among the first wave rode the Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler, handpicked by Sepp Dietrich. They weren't just told to fight. They were told to embody the Führer's will. Obedience without hesitation, brutality without restraint. Panzer columns smashed through the Ardennes. Stukas screamed overhead. Allied defenses crumbled. Within days, France and Britain were reeling. The Waffen-SS had proven they could keep pace with Blitzkrieg. But the real test was still ahead, and it wouldn't be on the battlefield alone. Late May, humanity itself, and he intended to use his private army as the tool. Himmler envisioned them not as ordinary soldiers, but as a sacred order. He buried himself in books on Nordic myths, Germanic runes, and racial pseudoscience, ideas that became the SS's ideological foundation. Still, myths and theories meant nothing without loyal instruments to carry them out. Himmler needed men he could strip of individuality, then rebuild into true believers. When Hitler became chancellor in January 1933, Himmler seized the opportunity. The unit, once a personal guard detail, transformed into an independent organization, answerable only to Nazi leadership. Recruitment swelled, but acceptance was brutal. History ended in one day, but this was just the first brushstroke. The SS wasn't finished. That same month, priests and teachers were rounded up. Father Antoni Wieczorek, a parish priest, was dragged into the market square, shot before his congregation. Beside him, schoolmasters fell one by one. It was part of Intelligenzaktion, a campaign to wipe out Poland's educated class. Within a year, over 60,000 priests, teachers, doctors, and lawyers would be gone. The SS was turning genocide into a system. Late September, on the Bug River, the Germans seized Brest before handing it to the Soviets. In those few days, the SS struck the Jewish quarter. A synagogue was stormed. Around 50 men were executed against its walls. The Nazi Party was still a fringe movement, scuffling for attention on the streets of Munich. Hitler's enemies were many: rival political groups, hostile newspapers, and government police. Out of this volatile climate came a private guard. They were no more than 100 men, dressed plainly, standing close to Hitler at rallies and shielding him from attack. No one watching them then could have imagined what they would grow into, or the horrors they would unleash a decade later. The real turning point came in 1929, when Heinrich Himmler took command. He seemed an unlikely choice, manufacturing zealots, men who saw themselves not as warriors, but as warrior priests, chosen for a holy war against all outside their creed. And the world soon enough would learn what such men could do. September 1st, 1939, Poland. At dawn, German forces surged across the frontier. The Wehrmacht came with tanks and planes, but the SS came with something else. Their orders were clear: eliminate the educated, silence the clergy, break the spirit of the people before resistance could even begin. But how do you crush a nation in a single month? The SS would answer with fire. Zwochew, a town erased. September 16th, near Łódź. SS men of the Leibstandarte entered the town of Zwochew. More than 200 civilians were slaughtered. Homes were torched while families hid inside. Survivors were herded to the square and forced to watch as neighbors were executed. Entire streets vanished in smoke. For Zwochew, Hitler's had to match Himmler's racial ideals: tall, blonde, healthy, disciplined. But choosing who could enter was only the beginning. Himmler wanted more than soldiers. He wanted men who could be reshaped in body and mind. The next step would determine who was truly worthy of wearing black. What these recruits endured, and how they were molded, would turn the SS into something far more dangerous than a simple guard unit. Dachau. It was cold-blooded murder, and yet no punishment followed. Dietrich denied responsibility. Berlin ignored it. Instead, the SS was praised for its ferocity. What should have been a stain became a badge of honor, and the violence only escalated. As Allied troops fell back on Dunkirk, the SS pressed hard at the perimeter. On May 21st, at Arras, British tanks nearly overran them. Only Luftwaffe intervention saved the day. Still, they pushed on, relentless, reckless, fanatical obedience. And once inside, there was no easy way back. The days were merciless. Dawn to midnight, the grind never stopped. 3 hours of marching in freezing rain. 3 hours of drills under fists and boots. 3 hours of combat until lips split and ribs cracked. Then more, always more. At Bad Tölz, another academy in Bavaria, recruits were forced through obstacle courses at gunpoint. Live rounds snapped overhead. Hesitation felt like death. Weakness brought only humiliation or beatings in front of the group. Mercy had no place. Teenager Miriam Goldstein later said, "They moved like devils, no trace of humanity. I heard the shots, the cries, and I knew my world was gone." But Brest was not unique. Across Poland, the same ritual unfolded again and again. September 28th, Warsaw surrenders. The city lies in ruins. But even surrender brought no safety. At Wolska Hospital, patients lay helpless in their beds. Flames engulfed the wards. Witnesses said German troops had set the fire deliberately. The screams of the sick echoed until the roof caved in. Even hospitals were not spared. No place was safe. But Berlin did not punish the SS. They praised them. Atrocity became a mark of loyalty. By October 6th, Poland had surrendered. For the Wehrmacht, it was a military victory. For the SS, it was proof of concept. From Złoczew to Brest, from Bydgoszcz to Warsaw, the method was the same. Identify, isolate, eliminate, intimidate. What they rehearsed in Dachau was now unleashed on real towns, real families, real lives. And this was only the beginning. Their next canvas of terror was near Dunkirk. A group of British and French prisoners, around 100 in total, surrendered to the 2nd Battalion of the Leibstandarte. They were marched into a barn, disarmed, trapped. Then grenades exploded inside. Survivors staggered in the smoke, only to be gunned down at point-blank range. Private Thomas Evans of the Royal Warwickshire Regiment crawled out alive. He remembered their killers laughing as they fired. By the end, 80 prisoners lay dead in the mud. This wasn't a battlefield class in Himmler's vision, but exhaustion was only half the weapon. The other was indoctrination. Every spare moment was filled with lectures on racial science, propaganda films showing Jews and Bolsheviks as parasites, and endless songs glorifying Hitler and sacrifice. Bayonet drills drove the lesson into the body itself. Straw dummies marked no war medals, no battlefield glory, no charisma to rival Hitler's. Before politics, he had managed a chicken farm outside Munich, where his obsession with bloodlines and breeding revealed the cold precision that later shaped the SS. Here was a man who believed he could re-engineer